Hello, I'm Steve Jolliffe, and here we are at Full Sail, Centre for the Recording Arts in Orlando. This is just one of the many exciting places I'm going to be taking you during the Art of the Music Workstation, a telecourse designed to help you express yourself through music, exclusively from WBCC TV, Channel 68. Hello, I'm Steve Jolliffe, and we're here at Brevard Community College on the set for the Art of the Music Workstation, a telecourse designed to help you express yourself through music, exclusively on WBCC TV, Channel 68. Hello, welcome to the Art of the Music Workstation. In part one, we spoke about antique tape recorders, how we used to make music 25 years ago, using those antique machines with reels moving round, although we still do that sometimes. Those days are slowly going away. I'm going to talk in part two about synthesizers and how they progressed and all the history of them, and give you some basic idea of how they work so that you don't think that's a very complex machine, which they aren't really. Once you break it all down, it's all very simple. So I'm going to start with this machine here, which is called a Pro 1, which you can probably see on the front there. This was one of the very first synthesizers that were made 25 years ago, which was monophonic. Monophonic being you could just play one note at a time. So here now we have the next stage. This is a very important change because we're changing from monophonic to polyphonic. I explained to you that monophonic meant that you could just play one note at a time. Now we can play more than one note at a time, and when this was the first polyphonic, this is actually a later version of the first one, which was called the Juno 6. This is called the Juno 106. The Juno 6, you could play 6 notes. You notice when I tried to play the last one, the 7th note, nothing happened. So you've got to be careful not to go over 6. But this was a tremendous advantage for us. Very exciting time. I can personally remember going and picking mine up full of very happy feelings and running back home with it and opening the box as quick as possible. Very exciting time. So it's a big change going from monophonic to polyphonic. So now we can play lots of chords. In this episode, we're going to talk about and try to quell the fears, or if you have any fears, about improvising and expressing yourself naturally on the piano, or on any other keyboard instrument or any other instrument. Basically, what we're trying to do is create our compositions immediately, without any pre-thinking. So no preconceived thoughts, no thinking to ourselves, we're going to move here or move there. We really want to let our minds go blank and develop the ability to express ourselves naturally without preconception. Now there are two main ways of playing. I can play harmonically or I can play what is called atonally. Harmonically, we stay within those scales, harmonic, the melodic, the minor or the major. So it sounds very harmonic. That's minor. So you can see I can't really go very wrong as long as I know what notes I'm playing over a certain scale. So if I'm in D, I'm playing a D down the bottom. As long as I play that series of notes, it's not going to sound dissonant. Keeping it very simple, we don't have to worry about a load of technique. We don't even have to know what the notes are called. Really what we have to know is to grow familiar with the sounds where our fingers are being placed, which will come very naturally. You can just allow yourself to be engrossed in the sounds that those group of notes are making. The other way of playing is using all the notes, and this is something that was thought and made into a theory by somebody called Schoenberg, and he called it 12-tone scale. And basically all it means is that we're using all the notes. So instead of just using those 8, we're now going to use all 13, which is called a chromatic scale. But again, that doesn't matter, it's just a word. So that leaves me free to play anywhere. We can play on all the white notes and not make a mistake. We can do anything really. We can even play on all the black notes, and that can sound effective. We've obviously got to develop a certain amount of technique, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to play really fast. Sometimes I am playing fast and sometimes that's effective, but it doesn't necessarily have to be very strong in technique. Technique is just a means of arriving at a statement, as Jackson Pollock said. And that is so true, and that's something I hold by, because you only need as much technique as you need to say what you feel. And if just a simple chord can say what you feel, then that's all you need. You're the one that makes those decisions. So don't let anybody tell you you've got to do this or you've got to do that. You know what you need. Also, this was the first introduction of digital. The word digital started to come into the picture. And digital, really the main difference between digital and analog, without going into too much detail, is that it's a computer-based way of making a sound. Rather than the old analog oscillators that we have, this sound is created digitally, which means it's much more reliable, it stays in tune. The old analog machine we had would continually go out of tune, so you'd be halfway through a concert or something and then suddenly because you have more than one oscillator, and some of them you'd have maybe 6, 8 oscillators, and one of them would start to move away and you've got to keep trying to keep them in tune, which can be very frustrating. whereas with the digital, it was much more reliable. Also, there was a definite change in the sound. It was much brighter, much cleaner, which a lot of people don't like. And there is a fashion now to go back to the analog sound and to try and bring back the old oscillator sound, which had like everything, it has a particular character to it. And personally, I'm very willing to lose that just to get a nice, clean, digital, reliable sound. This was the next one that came along, probably 6 months later. So made your first Juno that you paid all that money for worth a quarter of what you paid, and then made you go out and buy another one that cost you twice as much as you paid the last time. They're still doing that. We're going to move from these now and move on to the Yamaha DX7, which was a big milestone in synthesizers. It was, for a lot of people, they felt at last we have something that's a real instrument, not a toy anymore, something that really we can hang on to, which was in fact a definite case because the DX7 lasted for many years. It didn't go out of fashion for a long time, whereas a lot of these keyboards would be fashionable for about a year and then you'd have to give them away nearly. That's changing also because they're becoming antique and collector's items now. But so we'll move on to the DX7 now. So what happens, just basically looking at this keyboard, you can see that there's no more sliders really, just a volume slider, but the sliders have gone. So computers have really started to take over. And all these buttons on the top will give us multi-functions just like a computer does. Just to give you a little idea of how it sounds. It's got very thick, almost sounds acoustic, but of course it's not. It's completely electronic. There's no sampled sounds or anything like that. It's totally electronic. But because of this, the variation, the complexness that the frequency modulation causes, it makes it sound more akin to acoustic instrument. It's more that way because there's a lot more going on. The other thing that happened at this point was velocity. Just as we have on a piano, the harder we hit a note, the louder it becomes. So now they'd introduced this. So you had much more sensitivity as far as playing because you could increase how hard you hit the keyboard and get more touch response going. Another thing they introduced was what we call aftertouch. So not only would the sound increase by how hard you hit it, as it would with an acoustic piano. Also an aftertouch, so after you hit the key, so I'm still holding my finger on the key and pressing down again, so you get another effect that's coming in. And all these different controls you can assign to different places, which I won't go into in too much depth at this point because we don't want to get too lost in complexity, which is easy to do with this instrument because it is very complicated, as you'll see. I love the machine because it makes lovely sounds, and I'd been known to spend 2 weeks programming one sound, but that's the crazy way some people are like me. first real wing controller was the Lyricon, which was an American-made machine, which I used on the album with Tangerine Dream right back in '78, which you can hear on Cyclone on the Virgin label. These are the triggers, and then at the bottom we have two more controls. One of these, if I hold and press these controls up here, will change the sounds that I have set up, so I can move from one sound to another without having to come back and touch the machine. And the other one here will punch in intervals. So if I played an A, press my trigger at the bottom here, played another note which I wanted to latch onto that note. So then I can take those notes and move them around.